Welcome back everyone to our review of every chapter in Kirby Manga Mania. Last time we finished up Volume 5, so we're going to jump right into the final volume in the series, Volume 6. But before we do, make sure to check out our merch store in the description below where you can buy our shirts, mugs, and stickers to enrich your gameplay experience. Without further ado, let's get to the review. Next up is Volume 6, Chapter 1, King Dedede Secret. The chapter begins with Kirby doing a nighttime warp star stroll through Dreamland when he finds King Dedede digging a hole. King Dedede then throws a body-sized bag into the hole and buries it, smiling as he does. Kirby, recalling crime shows that he's seen on TV, believes he just saw King Dedede hide the evidence of a murder. The next day, King Dedede's in as good a mood as ever, while Kirby is in a sour mood, seeing Dedede as a horrible villain. Kirby starts acting strangely towards King Dedede, getting kinda scared and worked up every time he's around him, to the point where Kirby can't hold it in anymore and begs the king to turn himself in. Kirby admits he saw King Dedede bury something and tells him to admit to his crimes. This is when King Dedede brings him to the burial site to reveal what he buried, a mattress that he peed on in the middle of the night. The chapter ends with Kirby being happy that King Dedede isn't a murderer, and King Dedede being humiliated that everyone in Dreamland now knows that he wet the bed. Though this chapter was very short, it actually was the perfect length for what it was. The gags didn't overstay their welcome, most of them were pretty funny, and the punchline of it being a wet mattress instead of a dead body was something I was not expecting. All in all, a good enough chapter. With all of that in mind, Volume 6, Chapter 1 gets my rating of an A-. Next up is Volume 6, Chapter 2, Taking a Trip? Take Kirby! The chapter starts with King Dedede going up to Poppy in the castle and showing him that he won a Dreamland hot spring trip for 2 in a raffle. Insanely happy that he finally has a vacation, he wonders who he's going to take. King Dedede shows everyone and asks who wants to go with him. Of course, Kirby wants to go, but the king ignores him, asking if Ribbon or Adeline want to go. Unfortunately, they already have plans. Kirby already packs up, but King Dedede says that he specifically isn't invited because he knows that he'll just ruin the trip. Kirby then resorts to drastic measures. He makes his face look more like the cute game Kirby in order to convince him to take him. It almost gets the king, but he powers through, sticking to his guns. This is when Kirby goes crazy. Kirby has a campaign tour, book series, rigs the horoscope, tries hypnosis, and even tries blackmail to get the king to take Kirby. Of course, none of it works. King Dedede makes his decision to take Poppy with him, leaving Kirby frustrated. Kirby ends up working at the hot springs that they're vacationing to and even throws a tantrum to let him go, even though, as Poppy points out, he's already here. Honestly, not the direction I thought this chapter was gonna go, and I'm glad it didn't go the cliche route. Usually with plots like these, either the king would embellish goods and favors out of others to take advantage of them, wanting to go on the trip only for it to come crashing down at the end. This was more focused on Kirby being his hyperactive childlike self, going nuts over going on this trip, and it was kind of a breath of fresh air to not get a cliched plot. Things seem to be looking up. With all of that in mind, Volume 6, Chapter 2 gets my rating of an A. Next up is Volume 6, Chapter 3, Somebody Stop Kirby! The chapter begins with Kirby screaming from the distance for help as King Dedede is taking a stroll. Kirby runs past Dedede, begging for him to stop him. The king gets confused as to what Kirby is up to, and apparently Kirby started running and forgot how to stop. King Dedede starts to explain how to stop, but realizes it's harder to explain than he thought. The other denizens of Dreamland try to stop Kirby, but get hit like bowling pins. King Dedede decides that he will stop at nothing to stop Kirby, and allows Kirby to run straight into him. Kirby comes to and realizes that he has stopped running, thanks to the king's efforts. Unfortunately for the king, he has now started running and is unable to stop. Kirby, being the hero he is, sits down and eats Wispy's apples as King Dedede screams for help. This chapter seems like a slap-together idea. It's just so absurd that I wonder how you even come up with a chapter like this. I'm flabbergasted. Do you see how short the description of this chapter was? Like, how do I even review this one? The answer is apparently I don't. With all of that in mind, Volume 6, Chapter 3 gets my rating of a C-. Next up is Volume 6, Chapter 4, Kirby Stops Eating? The chapter starts with Kirby looking like death. King Dedede asks what's wrong, and Rick says that he's fasting. Kirby is fasting? Holy shit. He's even fasted for 1 whole hour and plans on fasting the whole week. Adeline asks Kirby why he's fasting, but he doesn't want to explain it at the moment, probably because it's the punchline. Some denizens eat food in front of Kirby, and Kirby gets so mad he inhales them, hoping that doesn't count as eating. Kirby tries to empty his mind, but all it does is fill it with more food. Kirby tries to meditate under a waterfall and ends up drinking some of the water, hoping water doesn't count as food either. Wouldn't you know it, Kirby actually fasted for a whole week. He doesn't seem too good either, straight up almost losing his mind. Kirby reveals that the reason he did all of this is because there is a new restaurant opening up nearby, and with an all-you-can-eat buffet that only has a 3-minute time limit. Kirby wanted his stomach to be empty enough to be able to eat as much food as possible within those precious 180 seconds. As punishment for making them worry so much about his well-being, everybody force feeds Kirby, breaking his fast. This chapter actually got a few chuckles out of me. The running gag of Kirby asking if a certain action he did counts as eating food was a pretty funny bit that made me chuckle each time. I wish the punchline to the joke was a little funnier, but honestly, I don't know what else I'd expect from Kirby. Having the chapter end with everyone turning against Kirby is a nice change of pace though. With all of that in mind, Volume 6 Chapter 4 gets my rating of an A-. Next up is Volume 6 Chapter 5. Do you like compliments? The chapter begins with Kirby essentially giving a TED talk about how much he respects King Dedede. He compliments him a ton, especially on his ability to forgive. Of course, this is all a ploy to get on the king's good side so he doesn't get mad at him for breaking his windows. Amazingly enough, this actually works. After returning to his friends to tell them that they're not in trouble, King Dedede sneaks up behind Kirby and asks him to compliment him again. Kirby does it once again, talking about how important King Dedede is, and King Dedede relishes in the compliments once again. That night, while Kirby is trying to sleep, King Dedede barges into his house begging to be complimented again. Kirby gets up and, instead of giving him compliments, gives King Dedede the business. Not only did he point out that he's a self-proclaimed king, but also says how tiny of a heart he has and that he wastes money, shows off, tells dad jokes, and scares away girls. Kirby then realizes that he got a bit carried away and apologizes for what he said. That's when King Dedede relishes in the lecture he got from Kirby and begs for him to keep doing it, starting the cycle anew. Kirby is now cursed to be chased forever by King Dedede wanting more lectures. Well, this was a twist. It's very rare that we see a chapter where Kirby's misdeeds leads him to get punished instead of the other way around. Must be opposite day. It's great seeing Kirby finally suffer some sort of consequence for his actions, instead of always getting away with being a menace. Also, is King Dedede okay? Kirby tells him all this stuff and King Dedede says he couldn't agree more? Bro, you need a therapist? Maybe he did have a traumatic childhood like that one episode of Kirby Right Back At Ya said. With all of that in mind, Volume 6 Chapter 5 gets my rating of a B+. Next up is Volume 6 Chapter 6, A Picnic with Adeline. The chapter begins with Kirby going on a picnic with Adeline, almost like that's the title of the chapter. There are a lot of rice balls that Adeline made to share with Kirby. Unfortunately, Adeline forgot the drinks, so she goes to get them and tells Kirby not to start without her. Kirby shockingly restrains himself. King Dedede shows up and takes a bit of a rice ball. Kirby beats him up for doing so, and when he turns around, everyone is taking a rice ball, even Meta Knight. The hell, guys? Kirby sees just how few rice balls are left and vows to protect the rest, but gets attacked from above by Bronto Burt, and even below by Molly. Wow, wasn't expecting a Kirby and the Amazing Mirror enemy to show up. Kirby overhears a passing Cappy mother and her children talking. The kid starts whining that Kirby's rice balls look so good and that they want one. Kirby, being the good Samaritan he is, reluctantly gives a rice ball to each of the kids, leaving only one rice ball remaining. Kirby tries to stay positive, saying that he plans on sharing this rice ball with Adeline. Kirby immediately loses the rice ball, having it roll down a hill and into the water. When Kirby shows up to the lake, he sees a blipper eating the last rice ball. Adeline finally shows up and sees the empty rice ball box. Adeline gets angry and says that she'll never make rice balls for Kirby again, and she leaves in a huff. Kirby, though sad, smiles thinking about how happy everyone else looked while eating the rice balls, growing a little bit more as a person. These chapters are definitely getting much better and not just recycling tired tropes over and over. I also like how Kirby is actually starting to grow as a person. Kirby in the previous volumes would have actually inhaled all of the rice balls and tried to cover it up rather than being the unlucky one. This makes Kirby a much more enjoyable character to be around while still keeping the chapter funny. I hope we continue to see chapters like these in the future. With all of that in mind, Volume 6 Chapter 6 gets my rating of an A. Next up is Volume 6 Chapter 7, Kirby's Doting Parent Diary? The chapter begins with Dynablade looking over the eggs in a nest. All of a sudden, a giant gust of wind caused by Kirby, Coo, and Kine blow the entire nest over, causing Dynablade to lose her eggs. Sort of lucky for the eggs, the nest landed inside of Kirby's mouth. Kirby starts playing with the eggs by wearing them as a hat, painting them, and juggling them. Coo, being, the bird, tells him to stop screwing around with the eggs. Kirby decides to take care of them by keeping them in his tummy and pretending to be pregnant. All of a sudden, as Kirby is singing to them, the egg starts moving and they hatch within Kirby. Kirby starts taking care of them by feeding them and tearing off Rick's fur and Coo's feathers to keep the chicks warm until their feathers come in. Days later, not only have the baby chicks grown feathers, but they've copied a lot of Kirby's mannerisms, teaching them how to fly like Kirby does, how to eat, how to ask for seconds, and even how to sing. King Dedede thinks it looks neat and tells Kirby he wants one. Kirby refuses and the birds shit all over Dedede. Nice. This starts a chain reaction of the chicks putting themselves in danger, only for Kirby to take them out of danger and, as a result, putting someone else in danger. It also causes Kirby to take drastic measures to keep the chicks safe, like inhaling an entire lake. Did Kirby just commit fish genocide? Throwing Dedede's castle away and inhaling all of the dangerous denizens of Dreamland. All of a sudden, Dynablade shows up and finally finds her babies. The chicks go to fly back to their mama, but Kirby doesn't let them at first. Coo convinces him to let them go to their real mama, and they go their separate ways. Everyone lived miserably ever after, with Kirby losing his kids and getting ugly replacements, and Dynablade having to deal with her chick-Kirby hybrids. Though this chapter wasn't as good as the others in this volume have been, it still wasn't the horribly repetitive schlock we got before. Though we hit all of the cliche story beats that a story like this would hit, it did have a few chuckles along the way. The ridiculousness of Kirby just yeeting the castle to space, and also Dynablade wondering what the hell Kirby taught her kids were both very good punchlines that got a chuckle out of me. Overall, it was a good chapter. Nothing great, but good. With all that in mind, Volume 6 Chapter 7 gets my rating of a B+. Next up is Volume 6 Chapter 8, Disaster, a get-well visit from Kirby? The chapter begins with Poppy telling everyone that King Dedede is in the hospital. He had to get surgery to get his appendix taken out. Kirby decides that everyone should go visit the king in the hospital, but it ends up that only Kirby and Gooey want to go. At the hospital, we see King Dedede is very lonely until Kirby and Gooey show up. Poppy tells them that they can't get the king too uppity or else his wound may open back up. This leads to a series of events that keep making King Dedede laugh, like Gooey getting stuck in a jar only to come out looking like this, having him watch slapstick comedy on TV, and Kirby and Gooey unintentionally doing a slapstick routine of their own. After more and more slapstick gags between Kirby and Gooey, once again, not intentional, just their idiocy creating these situations, King Dedede laughs so hard that he has to stay in the hospital for an extra week due to the reopened wound, ending the chapter. You can probably already guess how I feel about this gag-centric Dedede torture porn chapter. It's a whatever one. With all of that in mind, Volume 6 Chapter 8 gets my rating of a C. Next up is Volume 6 Chapter 9, Ninja Kirby. Yada 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 yada, alternate universe, yada yada, ancient Japan, boom, ninjas. We see Kirby and King Dedede doing ninja training, Dedede taking it seriously, and Kirby, of course, not. Kirby gets bored of training, so him and the king go to do the real deal. In this tower, there is a secret scroll with a forbidden ninja technique. Kirby gets them immediately caught and they have to run away from the guards. King Dedede drops caltrops behind them in order to slow down the enemies, and Kirby puts them in front of them for Dedede to step on. Kirby then comes up with the perfect escape plan. Give Dedede a bomb that will explode and launch him into a direction very fast. Kirby then walks in disguised as a woman looking for secret scrolls, which leads to both Kirby and Dedede getting caught. Kirby and Dedede dislocate their joints to escape their restraints. I don't want to think about the anatomy of Kirby and why he's able to do this. After some sneaking around, Kirby finds the secret scroll, which ends up being sheet music. Kirby sings it, everyone agreeing that Kirby singing should be a forbidden technique forever. With all that in mind, Volume 6, Chapter 9 gets my rating of a D. Next up is Volume 6, Chapter 10. Who's Happier? The chapter begins with King Dedede receiving a package from the mail and then getting immediately scolded by Poppy for mail order shopping again. King Dedede states that this one is special. He ordered a happiness pendant, a necklace you wear that will make your life happier. King Dedede goes outside to show it off to everybody, only to realize that Kirby has one too. This ignites a competition in the two of them to see who can come out the happiest after wearing this pendant. From here on, predictably, Kirby gets a good luck streak and King Dedede gets a bad luck streak. Hey, is that Nightmare Wizard? King Dedede goes outside to see just how happy Kirby is, but realizes he's not wearing the pendant anymore. Kirby apparently gave it to Gooey a while ago. King Dedede takes this opportunity to try to hog all of the good luck for himself, and even tries to create bad luck for Kirby. It becomes very apparent though that the good fortune that Kirby has been having the whole time has more so to do with Kirby's attitude towards things rather than actual good luck. King Dedede gets down in the dumps again, and Kirby asks him what does make him happy. The king starts listing things that he could have that would make him happy, but Kirby corrects him, saying that Ku told him these wise words. Happiness isn't about wishing for things you don't have, it's about finding happiness in what you do have. Wow, is that a moral? The chapter ends with Kirby saying that King Dedede would find happiness in having a friend like him, causing King Dedede to chase him. I never expected this gag manga to actually have a profound moral in one of their stories. Not only does this chapter teach that happiness is a matter of perspective, but that you'll never find happiness if you just focus on what you don't have. Honestly, I know a lot of adults that need to learn this lesson, myself included. I gotta give this chapter props for being meaningful and funny. With all that in mind, Volume 6, Chapter 10 gets my rating of an A. Next up is Volume 6, Chapter 11, Fight Off the Alien. Another alternate universe story. This time it takes place in a sci-fi setting instead of ancient Japan finally. We see King Dedede and Poppy on a spaceship flying towards an unknown planet to hopefully inhabit. When they touch land, they go to explore and find a Kirby alien that is starving. The king brings him on the ship to eat their food so he won't die of starvation. After eating his meal, the Kirby alien falls asleep. The king and Poppy take this opportunity to explore the planet some more, where they find another spaceship. When they board the ship, they see the crew is completely missing. They watch the last video log they recorded and see that the crew has run out of their 10-year supply of food, thanks to the round one. The crew will be wiped out soon enough. King Dedede and Poppy get suspicious on who this round one could be and get an emergency alert over their walkie from their crew. King Dedede and Poppy rush back to see all of their food is gone and that the alien is eating the crew members as well. Kirby then chases the king and Poppy in order to eat them as well, being drawn by the smell of the king's stinky breath. Kirby opens his mouth to reveal this terrifying frame. It turns out the extra mouths are actually the other crew the king saw. Turns out they are so hungry too that they want to eat the king. The chapter ends with the narrator proclaiming that planet Kirby is one of the most dangerous planets in the universe. Who knew this manga was going to try horror next? Honestly, it didn't do too bad. We actually didn't get a lot of gags in this one until Kirby started chasing the king and Poppy. Even then, the gags were equal parts funny and equal parts terrifying. All in all, this was a very creative chapter that blended comedy and horror pretty nicely. With all of that in mind, Volume 6, Chapter 11 gets my rating of an A. Next up is Volume 6, Chapter 12, Who's the Most Dangerous Man? This chapter begins with Galbo introducing himself as the most dangerous man in all of Dreamland. He strives to live the most risky life of all denizens of Dreamland. He decides to crawl into Kirby's mouth while he's sleeping, lasting 3 seconds before jumping out, thinking he can be inhaled at any moment. Kirby wakes up and asks Galbo if he wants to play. Galbo agrees, saying he knows all types of risky games like Rubber Band Tug of War. Galbo ends up losing as Ribbon and King Dedede show up. Galbo immediately falls for Ribbon and wants to show her how badass he is. Oh my god, he's the chosen. Galbo decides to rip an old blade clean off a box cutter, a risky move indeed. Kirby decides to do a risky task all his own and opens up a shaken soda bottle. He also washes his face but opens his eyes for a second to find the hot water handle with soap still on his face. Oh my god, I think I'm gonna faint. Kirby is going completely insane now. He starts taking a test with a mechanical pencil with only 1 stick of lead left at half length, filling his thermos with soda instead of the school-approved tea, and not bringing his handkerchief to cover his mouth during a fire drill, and even not wiping away the eraser bits after using an eraser. He's a psychopath, I'm telling you. Galbo admits defeat and deems Kirby the most dangerous man in Dreamland. King Dedede, not wanting to be one-upped, decides to risk eating udon noodles while wearing a white shirt. Of course, it was impossible for him not to suffer the dire consequences of his actions. The chapter ends with Kirby warning kids not to chase too many thrills. Though this one wasn't so creative in the story department, I would be lying if I said the jokes weren't funny. It's pretty funny having all these mundane risks being treated as risky as climbing a mountain without any equipment. I don't know, just tickled my particular funny bone, I guess. With all of that in mind, Volume 6, Chapter 12 gets my rating of an A-. Next up is Volume 6, Chapter 13, Poo Rangers. The chapter starts with Kirby enjoying an average day in Dreamland when all of a sudden, he gets a call from Chief Dedede to assemble the Dream Rangers. Kirby dines and dashes in order to make it to the meeting in time. At the castle, Chief Dedede has assembled all of the Dream Rangers except for Kirby, who got lost on the way because the secret base was hard to find. Chief Dedede tells the Rangers about a new supervillain going around causing trouble, Wispy Woods. Wispy Woods is giving anyone who passes by apples. This doesn't sound so bad until you realize the apples actually turns people into his henchmen if they eat them. Sunglasses included. We see Wispy Woods continuing to enact his evil plan as the Dream Rangers arrive, taking up so many panels to introduce themselves that Wispy even comments on it. Kirby goes to fight all of Wispy's henchmen, but Ku reminds him that they are innocent people that are being controlled. They offer them apples, and Kirby, of course, eats a bunch of them, turning him against the Rangers. Kirby starts beating up his friends when they remind him of the good times and even give him a microphone to sing and remember the vow they made to protect the world when they did karaoke that one time. Not only did Kirby singing free him of Wispy's curse, but also snapped all of his henchmen out of it too. The Dream Rangers go to finish Wispy off, but he grows giant and starts to grab everyone with his roots. Kirby also grows giant using his balloon power and knocks Wispy over. They take the opportunity to do a super special awesome chocolatey fudge coated mega super move on Wispy. The explosion was so big that Wispy gets obliterated and our heroes get burnt to a crisp. The chapter ends with the narrator proclaiming the day saved, but there is an even greater force out there dispelling evil all over the land. Mr. X. Who is Mr. X? Could it be Dark Matter? Nightmare Wizard? Necrotius? Nah, it's just Poppy. Though I'm not a huge fan of the Power Rangers, I didn't feel like I had to be in order to appreciate this chapter. Having Wispy be the villain of the what-if scenario this time instead of Dedede was a nice breath of fresh air. Hell, the story even had twists, turns, and laughs all throughout. Overall, a great chapter. Hope to see more like it in the future. With all of that in mind, Volume 6, Chapter 13 gets my rating of an A+. Finally, last up is Volume 6, Chapter 14, My Hammer is My Friend. The chapter begins as we get to look at King Dedede as a baby. Not turned into a baby, but actually when he was a baby. King Dedede cried and cried and cried no matter what the Waddle Dees did. When they gave DDD his hammer though, he stops crying and starts having fun. It becomes pretty clear that the hammer becomes a sort of security blanket for the king. The head Waddle Dee, you can tell because he has a mustache, gets concerned because the hammer is the king's only friend. Poppy gets invited over and invites the king to go bug catching with him, showing the king and Poppy's first meeting. As they're outside, King Dedede gets scared when bugs start flying near him. King Dedede is set on going home and becomes a difficult child as Poppy starts to despair for Dreamland's future. All of a sudden, a Gobchomplin grabs Poppy and starts eating him. King Dedede goes to run away to get help, but he starts to hear his hammer start talking to him. The hammer tells him to stand up and fight, giving Dedede the confidence to whack the Gobchomplin as hard as he possibly can. He hits it so hard that it spits Poppy right out, giving Dedede the confidence to be a hero and a courageous king. We then see King Dedede wake up in present day. Kirby comes by and asks the king to play battle with him. King Dedede agrees and goes to grab something from his closet. At the arena, it is revealed that King Dedede has a very tiny hammer, the original one from his childhood. The chapter ends with them about to battle. What the fuck? This chapter was amazing! I'm not even kidding, this is the last one we have to go over and it's the best one out of them all. Just giving backstory to King Dedede and Poppy and giving huge meaning to his hammer is so cool. It actually tugged my heartstrings a little. Wow. With all of that in mind, Volume 6, Chapter 14 gets my rating of an A+. And that is the end of Volume 6. And before we move on to the final ratings, I would like to have one more intermission by the amazing crew over at DUBASSES.
I drew this Kirby with my left hand. This Kirby was drawn by Ishizaki, my editor. This Kirby was drawn by my assistant.
Hey, your assistance is better than yours!
Ouch! Gritty comic style, shoujo style, live action.
The live-action one looks entertaining!
You gotta be kidding.
With that, 74 chapters and over 100 pages of script later, we have concluded reviewing every single chapter of Kirby Manga Mania to date. So how does this Kirby manga stack up as a piece of Kirby media? Unfortunately, this manga is very much a mixed bag. Sometimes chapters are so short that they barely do anything at all, sometimes the chapters are just gag after gag after gag with no substance to it whatsoever, and sometimes the chapters are wildly creative character pieces with a rich story and funny gags. The quality is very inconsistent, but it's nowhere near bad at all. I just wish I could say there were more great chapters than okay chapters, but unfortunately most chapters are middle of the road. If that last chapter tells me anything though, is that there is hope on the horizon. With all of that in mind, Kirby Manga Mania so far gets my overall rating of a B. Thank you everybody so much for joining us on this monumental adventure. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe to see more videos like this one, and hit that bell to never miss an upload. If you want me to go over Volume 7 when it eventually comes out, put that in the comments below as well. Also, go check out the DUBASSES channel where we post comic dubs with my team of extremely talented voice actors and actresses. It's just a fun little side channel I run, so I would really appreciate it if you could go support us there as well. Join me on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday for our live streams where we will be playing the following games on screen. Also join us on Friday for the next episode of the Crash Retrospective where we will be going over Crash Team Racing. I'd like to give a special shout out to Andrews Retro Games and Daniel Hawkins for being the most well-esteemed guests of them all. If you want a shout out in every video as well as early access to every video and some special emojis for our live streams, hit that join button to become a channel member. It really helps us out and allows us to make bigger and better content for you guys. We also have a merch store in the description where you can buy our mugs, shirts, and stickers to enrich your gameplay experience. With that, I bid you, my well-esteemed guests, adieu.